Your due season is not the same as anyone else, so let's stop comparing. We gotta look at ourselves in the mirror and do an evaluation. Whatever it is, I want to encourage you. Don't lose your patience with God. He has a plan. And if He promised you something, He will bring it to pass. Be encouraged. God's got stuff for you with your name on it. You've got access to it. It'll have your fingerprint. It will belong to you. You don't have to look for or desire anybody else's stuff. And what's inside of you, I promise you, it is filled with greatness and with purpose. And you know what? When this season of challenges is over, you'll look back at what your pain has produced, and it will all be worth it. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to our very first episode of Hope Talks. I'm so glad that you are here with us this evening. I'm so excited. I'm excited about this season that we're in. I'm excited about this season of hope in the midst of everything that we've been dealing with over the past year and a half, and even before that, and even the times to come. Listen, we're always going to need hope. So I'm so excited about the conversations that we are getting ready to have this season with some of my very good friends that I've invited in to join us to talk about hope, to talk about faith, to talk about A Pocket Full of Hope, my very first book. And I am just so grateful that you've made the choice to join us this evening. I hope that you enjoy. I hope you have a good time. I'm going to go ahead and bring my good friend Kathy in. Let me just introduce her to you. It's only fitting, even though I know her so well, it's only fitting that I give her a proper introduction because there is just so much to her, okay? Katherine Isaac is a cybersecurity executive living in Toronto, Canada. She prides herself on taking initiatives from good to great. Katherine is a maximizer with a strong sense of vision, purpose, and discipline. As a leader, Katherine believes in mentoring and empowering others to take initiative in creating their own success. Katherine is passionate about encouraging opportunities for underprivileged youth and supporting women in STEM. She's active in the community as a speaker, in mentorship programs, as a leader, and a member of the board of directors of Urban Promise Toronto. Her advice to young people is an incredibly important thing you can do for yourself is to find what you love to do and trust that the opportunities will follow. I love that. Katherine was born into a family with an extensive Christian legacy and accepted the Lord into her life at a young age. She has volunteered in various ministries, including Sunday school and music, and she served as the youth director for her local church for several years. Katherine enjoys spending time reading and watching superhero movies with her husband and her two daughters. That is my friend Katherine Isaac. And can I just add to that introduction? She's also one of my day ones since I don't even know when. So many years now, we have been such good friends. And I'm so grateful that you are still in my life. Kathy, I love you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really happy to be here tonight. I'm a little bit nervous with this platform, but I feel good.
Well, it's going to be good. It's going to be fun. Hopefully all of our nerves will kind of fizzle down after we get going and we get chatting. All right?
All right.
Okay, so let's get it right into it. We're talking about hope. We're talking about hope in the midst of all that we've been dealing with in the last long while now, it seems. Now, let's just start off by, though I know the story, why don't you share with everyone, what is it that you went through recently that really kind of challenged your faith?
Yeah. So at the end of March of this year, in the middle of a pandemic, as a surprise to us, all of a sudden out of nowhere, myself, my husband, and my children all tested positive for coronavirus. We didn't expect it. We didn't see it coming. We had been following all of the protocols. We did absolutely everything we were supposed to do. So even when the message showed up on my screen saying the test results were positive, I literally just had to like stop. My husband was speaking to me and I was just kind of like, stop. I needed to read word for word what it said on the screen because it just took a moment to absorb that. Somehow we were positive. And so within the next 2-3 days, we learned that all of us were positive. And so we went into like lockdown at home. We're following the procedure. People started dropping off all kinds of concoctions and things to help us get better. And there were all kinds of remedies coming at us. And it was interesting. We said, okay, we can do this. And we stayed at home and we were working through it at home. And all of a sudden, maybe about the 6th or 7th day of it or so, I started to feel a little winded. Like it was difficult for me to go up the stairs by myself. And by the time I got to the top of the stairs, I was kind of like, I need a break. Or I couldn't stand in the shower for the entirety of my shower. I wasn't okay. And I knew I wasn't okay. And it took about a day before I realized that my oxygen levels had dropped very low. My blood oxygen levels. And so we had called public health to kind of say, what do we do next? Because I didn't think it was right for us to just go to an emergency room, considering we were all COVID positive. And while we were sitting there waiting for public health to call back, I just said to my husband, you know what, just call 911. I figured, he even said, are you sure? I said, well, you know what, I figure they'll come and tell us what to do. At least that's better than us going to the emergency room. And so they wouldn't even come into the house, considering we were all positive. So I've got 2 paramedics on my driveway in hazmat suits from head to toe and a stretcher out there and an ambulance. So of course neighbors are like, what is going on over there? But I walked down the stairs myself. I walked outside myself. I got on the stretcher myself. So I was able to do all of that. And in the back of the ambulance, the medic said to me, yeah, the number's pretty low. We're going to take you to the hospital and get some oxygen. So at that point I was kind of like, oh, okay. I didn't realize it was, I just thought, it's worse than I thought it was. So, okay, let's go to the hospital. Let's get that oxygen. So I went to the emergency room, got on the oxygen. That felt like everything. I was like, this is what heaven must feel like. It was like the freshest air. And that was great. And I was there for a few hours before they came and said, okay, we've got your room ready and we're moving you to a room. And I was like,
wait a minute.
Why am I going to a room? And they were like, oh, you're very sick. We're admitting you to the hospital. You're going to be here for a few days. I left my house with my cell phone. I didn't have a purse. I didn't have my glasses. I had nothing because I didn't think I was even going to the hospital. So I had no expectation that I was going to be admitted to the hospital. So I was like, okay, fine, let's go to a room. But I'm going to have to call my husband because I had to call him and tell him what was going on. Keep in mind, this is coronavirus time. So I'm by myself.
Right.
I mean, I have no guests, no nothing. But I had to call him. I'm like, look, grab my backpack. I'm going to need some underwear. I'm going to need some deodorant. I'm going to need some lotion. I'm going to need I'm going to be here a few days.
Right.
And so we're there. I'm in the room, they're hooking me up to an IV and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, I guess this is, the Canadian healthcare system. They're going to do what they need to do to make sure that I'm well. And I spent the first night in that room, and the next morning is a bit foggy to me still. I'm not 100% sure what happened. I remember a lot of activity. I remember a lot of different doctors. I remember a respiratory doctor telling me that he was going to be my doctor even after I left the hospital. And I just remember a lot of noise and clatter and people being excited. And so I eventually said to a guy, a male doctor named George, I remember his name. I said to him, what's happening? What's going on? He said, oh, I just did an assessment and you're going to the ICU. You are very, very sick. And I'm looking at him like, what are you talking about? Because I didn't feel that way. I still felt, I didn't feel great, but I felt good. I felt like I could get up and walk home and go catch a bus and go home or call an Uber or whatever. He said, no, you're very, very sick. You're going to the ICU. We're going to put you on a ventilator and you're going to go to sleep for a few days. And I said to him, I was just like blown away. I said, well, I'm going to have to call my husband. And they said, no, we've done that already. I was like, oh, this is serious. If you've called my husband, what's going on? But that's when I started to really take a look at what was going on around me. And there was all kinds of things hooked up to me that I didn't remember being hooked up to. I was no longer in my clothes. I was in hospital gown, and I don't know when that happened. And so that's when I realized, okay, stuff is happening here. Let me just go along with this because clearly these people know what they're doing. So I went to the ICU, and like I said, that first day I felt, not well, but okay, and I could do the work. The second day, it was like, when I say the timing on this was all perfect, I was in the right place at the right time, because that very next day was like, it hurt to breathe. I couldn't inhale without coughing, and I don't mean like coughing, I mean like violently coughing, and it hurt, and everything hurt. And they had me, lie down on my chest as much as I possibly could. And like, now that I think about it, I think I should have been able to do that easier. I should have been easier than I made it. But that's where, anxiety came into play and stuff. And I felt very claustrophobic and tight in that cot with the rails up. I remember asking them to take the rails down, and they said they couldn't. I remember asking them to take all the sheets off of me, like take everything off, just leave me in here with nothing. But it was just this sense of suffocation. Like, it literally felt like I was suffocating all the time, and it was incredibly hard. And I was not on a ventilator. So I had asked the respiratory therapist at one point, when am I going to go on the machine? She said, the machine is here. It's right beside you. But if we don't have to, we're not going to use it. I said, but George said, you guys have good success with the ventilator. She said, yes, we have great success. The ventilator will save your life, but it will increase your risk of heart disease. It'll increase your risk of lung disease. It'll increase your risk of kidney disease. And if we don't have to do it, we don't want to do it. So I said, well, what's the deciding factor? She said, the deciding factor is you and how much work you're planning on putting in.
Wow.
So I said, all right, cool. And she said to me, if you're willing to do it, I'm here with you and I'll do it with you. I said, okay. So we fought through for several days. It felt like, I think it was probably 2 days, every half hour, breathing exercises that, like I said, were incredibly painful. I had oxygen, not the little tiny oxygen tube. I had it was a very thick, they call it OptiFlow or something like that. And I came into the ICU on 200% oxygen. And the goal was to get down to 50% oxygen before I could move to the smaller tube and then work my way off the oxygen completely. And it was incredibly hard to do. It was really, really, really hard. And all I could really do in between those half hours, because I wasn't eating or anything like that, in between those half hours, is try to sleep and just pray and try and work through it. But it got to a point where, confusion sets in very quickly. I was doing a lot of self-talk in there and, talking myself up and talking through it. And I would do the exercises with the respiratory therapist, but when she wasn't there, I still needed to do it by myself. I had a blood pressure cuff on, and that went off every half hour. So whenever that finished, that'd be my cue to kind of do it. And I found myself, guiding myself through these exercises. And there's one point I remember, I don't know if it happened before, but there's one point I remember where once I finished that breathing exercise, it was like there was another voice. And I knew it wasn't my voice because it was talking to me in the second person. And it was saying, when you see your name pass by, touch your name and do this. And I was doing it and I was responding and I was speaking out loud to this voice. And when I spoke out loud, I think I caught myself and I opened my eyes and I said, who are you? I said, who are you? Like, what is that? And at that point, that's when I realized that I'd been entirely focused on the physical battle that I was in there for. And at the same time, there was a spiritual battle and a mental and emotional battle happening at the same time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so with that time, I said, listen, I don't know who that is. If you are not of God, you can't be here. I have no time for you right now. And so my prayers changed at that point to like, God, look, I'll do what I can on the physical side. I'll do my part, but I need you to just take over the spiritual side. Send your angels on assignment, put them around this bed, around the door, around the hospital, on the street, wherever they need to be, to make it so that nothing that is not of you can enter into this room, because I just didn't have the time. When I say I didn't have the time, there was no way I was going to be able to focus on a spiritual battle at the same time that I was doing what I was doing. And so I just had to hand that over. But at this point, I started to get confused from a faith perspective as to what my role was supposed to be. What am I supposed to do next? How do I, like when I say, here, God, you take this part, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm not, like, God, I'm not putting you in this physical side? Like, I've got this? Do I though? or is this something you should be taking as well? And so it got to a point where I felt, like I said, it was becoming confusing to me about what faith and hope actually was. Because it's like, am I fighting something that is not my fight to fight? Should I just be getting on the ventilator and letting God take it from there? And at one point I actually asked the therapist, it's like, can we just do the ventilator? And she looked at me like I was crazy. And she asked me like if I was giving up. And I was like, I'm not giving up. I just don't know what to do.
Right.
I just don't know what to do. And if this thing is going to save my life, is it better to just get on that and let God do what he does? Or what? Like, what do I do next? And so that was a real challenge of faith to me, that I was in a position where I wasn't sure. I mean, I grew up, learning and knowing that God's will is good. God's will is perfect. Is this my will? Like, how do I let God have his way right now? And if God's way, and I had to, find, like, am I accepting God's way? Like, if this is the end of my life and that's God's will, then it's good and it's perfect. Who am I to intercept that and to get in the way of what God is trying to do? And so that became very challenging and confusing for me. I was in a moment where I was kind of like, I don't know what to do.
Right.
I have no idea what to do next. So that was my challenge. Oh, and I should add that I made it through the ICU experience and felt great. And several days, I moved out of the ICU and back into onto a COVID floor. And then they considered me COVID resolved. And at that point, it was the height of the third wave here in the GTA in Toronto. So there were no more beds anywhere. So forget any more private room. I ended up rooming with other women. And, some were coming straight from the ventilator. One woman, you could tell that her kidneys had just quit working because her complexion was not a color I'd ever seen on a human being before. And so I felt like these women are so sick. These women are really, really sick. I'm doing great. When am I going home? But what I started to notice was that these women could get up and walk. They could go where they needed to go. I couldn't. If I stood up, I had to hold on to things or I would fall over. And so one day the physiotherapist came to see me to take me for a walk, and we didn't get 10 feet down the hall before they brought me back. And when I say they, it was a team of 4 therapists that came to try and get me to walk. And they brought me back and they started doing some tests, like, push against this and put my feet up against something and grab their hands. And they were doing all these things. And at this point, I'm just cooperating. And later that same afternoon, they came back and said, or a nurse came in, or somebody came in, machines came in, and they said, we're giving you a CAT scan. We're taking you to a CAT scan or something. And not too long after that, a doctor came in and told me, he said, I'm sorry, but I've got some bad news. I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking? I'm on like 20% oxygen. I'm eating, because at first they had me on liquid foods. I'm eating solid foods. I'm doing everything I've been asked to do. You're supposed to be here to tell me I'm going home. What's going on? And he said, well, I've got to tell you that it turns out you've had a stroke. And I'm thinking to myself, no, you might mean that 65-year-old lady over there. Or maybe you mean the lady over there whose kidneys aren't working, but not me. I'm great. I'm ready to go. And he looked at me like I was insane. He's looking at me to see if I'm absorbing this information, because clearly I wasn't. And he said, no, you've had a stroke. And he started to explain to me the kind of stroke I had and where it was located and how it was impacting my balance and my left side, the left side of my body. And I said, oh, is that why I can't walk? And he said, yeah. And I said, is that why my arm does this? So as you can see, my arm is still what they refer to as ataxic. And he said, yeah. And I was still not getting it because I felt so good. So I said to him, so when can I go home? And he said to me, you've had a stroke. I was like, I know, what does that mean? He's like, it means you're going to be here for a little bit longer. So in total, I ended up staying in the hospital for about 3.5 weeks. And that wasn't my plan. I had no one to I left my house with nothing but a cell phone. And I was still trying to figure out, like, what is this, God? Like, good and perfect? Still? Like, what is this? Like, what does it all mean? And I think that was the challenge that I've had to face.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness, what a story. Like just listening to you retell the story, I'm going back to that place that we were all at when we got the call and the text and all the messages that, oh my goodness, Kathy is in the hospital and this is what's going on. It's taking me right back. And I just, wow. Something that stood out to me though when you were speaking, and I had some stuff in my notes that I was going to talk about because we kind of talked about them before. But something that stood out to me while you were speaking was when you said that you were focused, you needed to focus on the physical healing and the getting better physically, and the spiritual side, though you were aware of it, you didn't feel like you needed to focus on that, or like you had the capacity or the strength to focus on that
Right.
at the moment. And I think that stood out to me because we are created in the image of God. We are spirit. Our flesh is just our flesh, clothing our spirit. And so I think it stood out to me because it highlights the fact that though you were spiritually aware, your body was also in a place where you needed to heal it in order for everything else to flow properly. And so I think in those cases, it reminds me of a part in the book, and you might remember this. I think I can't remember what the chapter is called, but we're talking about like exhaustion and how sometimes we can become so physically exhausted that we can't do the things that we're supposed to do, like you said, in the spirit. And so the Bible talks about how when we are physically exhausted, if we can have people around us that can lift up our arms, lift up our hands. Let me try to find that. Lift up our hands so that we can.
Moses.
Moses, yes. Moses.
It's in your book. I just read it recently. It's in one of
Yes.
the days
And
there.
yes, and Aaron, and he had Aaron on one side and her on the other side. And when Moses got weary, they were able to hold up his hands for him. And when they held up his hands, that's when the Israelites were able to win the battle. And so I thought about that as you were talking, and I thought about how you were in there. And I don't know if it was the same moment or if it was around the same moment, but while you were struggling physically, you had like an army of people outside of the hospital praying for you, lifting up your arms, like just praying that you would just pull through this, praying that you would be strong spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And I think it's so amazing when we talk about the message of hope. One of the things that we have to talk about is that we don't go into the hope journey alone. We go in with a community of people, a community of believers, a community of people that God has placed in our life, or sometimes that we have to seek out, because sometimes we don't have help because we don't tell somebody I need help, right? So sometimes we have to seek out that help. Say, listen, I'm struggling in this area. I really need you to pray for me. I'm struggling in this area. I really need you to help me. I really need you to come to my house and do ABC. And sometimes we just don't do those things. And so I think it's important when we talk about hope to talk about that exhaustion that we face as human beings, and talk about the fact that we need each other. We need each other. And so while you were in the hospital and we were, praying and crying and taxing Sheldon, calling him, texting him every minute, dropping off whatever we were dropping off at your house, all of those things, I got to a point where I was like, God, I don't even know what to do. I felt at one point, I felt kind of helpless. Like, I don't think Sheldon needs any more food because so many people have brought him food. The girls are okay. What else can I do right now? And that's when it hit me. You know what? Ayesha, send Kathy your manuscript. See if maybe it'll encourage her. See if maybe it'll help her. If it doesn't, at least it'll give her some good reading material, because I know you love to read. And so I sent you my manuscript. You were the very first person outside of my husband that read it. And you did say that it encouraged you. And I was so blessed by that. But I want you to talk about now, and it may or may not be around the time that you got the manuscript or read it. It may not be. But I want you to talk about your lowest point or your lowest moments. What was going through your mind at your lowest moment, and how did you kind of come out of that? Do you remember the moment that you came out of that lowest point? And what did that look like? And you can be as real as possible. Just give it to us. Like,
I think at my lowest points, there was quite a few low points though. So it's kind of tough to just say which one was the lowest. But I
Right.
think I look back now, and I feel like when I asked the therapist to put me on the ventilator, that was a pretty low point. Like I was just physically exhausted, and it was like I would never have said I'm quitting, I'm done. But that's really what it was. I was giving up, saying like I can't do this anymore. Somebody else do it for me. I think that
Right.
was a pretty low point. And I think another very low point for me was like trying to figure out like why is this happening to me? I didn't do anything to anybody. I don't do drama. I don't gossip and rumor. I don't lie, cheat, steal. I am where I'm supposed to be. I've always followed as best as I possibly could the right path. Like what did I do? Why am I here? And funny enough, just before going into spring, my lady friends, we have our own little Bible study, and the very last session that we had, we covered the passage that, where Jesus said to the disciples just before he was taken away, that in this life you will have struggles, or sorry, before he ascended. And we talked about that as a group, that it doesn't talk about it talks about in this life. It's not in the next.
Right.
It's in this life you will have
Right.
struggles, and that we really talk about the fact that we're not exempt from struggle. And so I kind of had to deal with that. But I think that was my lowest points were that was like, what did I do? What did I do wrong? What did I do to deserve this? And I think this is where that conversation kept coming to me about God's will and it being good and perfect. And I've said to a lot of people over years that at any given point in time, we can't really tell if a given event is good or bad because we don't know the outflows of the event. And so I kept trying to tell myself, like, who knows what this is going to birth? Who knows what it's going to bring? I just kind of stick with it. But it was definitely, I think those were my two very low points that I can think about, is when I was kind of like, put me on the ventilator. And the second was just questioning God as to, like, again, what's up with this good and perfect part? And is that, like, how is this good and perfect? What did I do to land myself in this situation?
Right. Isn't it interesting though that that's what we do to ourselves sometimes when we go through things, our struggles, like Jesus said, we're going to have hardships, we're going to have struggles. Isn't it something that when we go through these things, we end up looking at our lives and saying, but what did I do? How did I, what did I do wrong? Is this some kind of punishment for something that I've done wrong? Is this some kind of punishment for something that I did to somebody else or didn't do, or something that I missed? Like, what is it that got me here? And the truth of the matter is that you just said it. Jesus said these are things we're going to have to go through. He bore a cross. We have to bear a cross. He struggled, he suffered. We have to struggle and suffer. It's just one of those things that we face in our lives. And you talked about the good and perfect will of God. And I think sometimes when we talk about the good and perfect will of God, we think because it's good and because it's perfect, that means that it's smooth sailing.
Perfect. Yeah.
And it's not good. What if the good and perfect will of God means it's full of stuff that we have to get through so that we can testify about how good and perfect God's will is, right? So I love that you said that. We at our lowest points will sometimes start to point the finger, and we're not pointing the finger at somebody else, we're pointing the finger at ourselves, saying, what did I do? Have I done something wrong? And if you're like me, you start saying, God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, can I fix it?
I'm
Is there
taking
something I can do?
inventory, of all the things I'm not a perfect person by any means. So now it's going through all the stuff that I have done to say, yeah, but does that mean I deserve this? No, that wasn't bad enough. Finding, like, literally trying to figure out what I did to cause this.
Right. And the truth of the matter is there is nothing that we can do that would cause God to do something terrible to us, because that just goes against the nature of God altogether. Yeah. And so for us to even think that there's something we could do to interrupt his goodness is like an offense against God in itself. There's nothing, we're not powerful enough for that. We're not big and strong and mighty enough to interrupt God's purpose, right? God's purpose
Right.
is what God's purpose is. God's goodness is what God's goodness is, right? So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. So, do you remember the point where you turned a corner in your mind? Because I know that, I was speaking with our church the other day about sometimes when you visit someone in the hospital and you know that they're in their last few moments, they will start to say things like, I finished. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm ready to go. And oftentimes when they start to speak like that, that means something has happened in their minds. And once their minds go there, you find that shortly afterwards, that person does transition on. And so I believe that those decisions have to be made in your mind first before you actually release. So in the same sense, our minds also have to be fixed on moving on and fixed on determination and fixed on faith and hope in order for us to keep pushing forward. So can you pinpoint the moment or maybe a series of
Yeah.
moments where
Yes.
you changed your mind about
Yeah.
your outlook, about your perspective?
I think the very first one, like I said, you're right. There was ebbs and flows. There's hills and valleys, right? I feel great right now, and then it was just like, this is terrible. What am I doing here? Whose fault is this? Kind of thing. And I was at a point where I was really, really upset because not only was I going through this thing, but I felt like I was going through it alone because of the isolation. So because I had COVID, I think this might have been, I was in so many different rooms that as I have each of these memories, I'm trying to think of what room was I in at that time. Either way, whatever room I was in, I was by myself. There was nobody in the room with me. And that was pretty tough too. The isolation, no visitors, no guests. I did, calls with my family members and stuff. But I remember saying to God, if there was just somebody that could just hold my hand, just hold my hand. I just want somebody to hold my hand and I can get through some of these exercises a little bit better. And I was sleeping and I woke up. I don't want to get emotional on this call. I'm trying not to. But I woke up to this lady holding my hand. And again, keep in mind, I'm in the hospital during coronavirus. People are wearing masks and they have these bonnet things on their heads and they have these goggles and the foam. So I can't tell you who this lady was. I just know she had white hair. And she was holding my hands and she was praying. And she was praying that God send the Holy Spirit, the comforter, and to send peace. And all I could say was, like, I wasn't alone. Like, I just opened my eyes and saw that and realized I wasn't alone. Like, at that moment, I think that's when it really occurred to me that I wasn't alone, that there was somebody there and that there always would be someone there. So that was a huge turning point for me. In recognizing that I hadn't done anything, I wasn't being punished, and I wasn't alone. And I think that was a significant moment. And I don't know who that lady was. She wasn't my nurse. She was wearing hospital attire. I assume she worked there. But she's somebody, I believe, who heard the voice of the Lord. She was praying, and she was Catholic. Based on how she was praying, I recognized that she was Catholic. And I'm not Catholic, but, one God, same God. And that she came in right when she needed to, or at the moment that I needed it. And that was the first major turning point for me. A second turning point was when I started reading your book. Part of the struggle I was having, like I mentioned, is like, what do I do? Like, what do I do next? And if I believe God's will is good and perfect, doesn't that mean I have to accept whatever comes? Like, that's kind of how I was feeling. And I think I texted you at one point to say, like, this book was really helping me to define hope, because, hope was not something that I thought I was allowed to feel in that moment, because I felt like hope was contradictory to acceptance, if that makes sense. I mean, in the moment, it made so much sense. But it felt like if I am accepting that God has control, it means I have to accept that I could die, that I could not get better, that this could be it, that maybe I'll never walk again, that, I have to accept those things. But to hope for a different outcome felt like I wasn't being faithful, like I wasn't really handing it over to God. And so I struggled with that. And you had said, do you mind if I send you the book? And I said, send me the book. I got nothing else to do. I got nowhere to be. Send me the book. And I had watched like everything I could possibly watch on Netflix up to that point. Send me the book. So when I started reading it, like we've talked about before, the book is designed with daily readings, but just getting through the foreword, the foreword had in there the definition that you were using of hope. And I'm going to read it now, if you don't mind. It says, hope is the perspective that there's a glimmer of sunshine on the other side. Hope is the idea that things can turn around for the better. And so just in reading that, I was kind of like, okay, that was enough for me to want to read on further. And I think my intention originally was to read the whole book in one sitting, but I fell asleep. I was on a lot of drugs and medicine at that time, so I'll give you that. But there was a point where I got to early in the book where it said, hope is always an option. And I think I texted you that night, and I was just like, just that one line, hope is always an option, was a big turning point for me, because it was like, it was the permission I needed to actually hope for something else. That was a big deal at that moment in time, because like I said, it felt like hope was, and I wasn't using the word hope. Like I said, it was expecting a positive outcome, or expecting the outcome I wanted, or even wanting a specific outcome felt like it was wrong. And so I needed to see that. The second day I woke up and I read some more. And I think the other thing that really hit me was, God has brought you this far. The next move is up to you. And it actually says right behind that, you have endured. You're still here. God has held you in his arms. Either trust him or leave things to chance. And so, I took a look over the days that I had been there, and I said, I feel like now I can look at it and say, if I had given myself over to the ventilator, would that have been me leaving it up to God, or would that have been me leaving it to chance? Right? I feel like it said, God has brought me this far. I was in the hospital. I was in the right place at the right time. I was literally there a day before I needed to be there.
Right.
And, I look at that as like, God brought me there. He brought me that far. He brought me to the place where I could get help. And to say the next move is up to me meant I needed to participate in my healing. And the respiratory therapist had said something very much like that. When I'd asked about going on the ventilator, she said to me, if you go on that, then you're not taking part in your own recovery. And that was so reading it again in the book was a little bit like confirmation, saying, yeah, no, you have to do some work. You got to do something. You picking it up and saying, "Dear God, you take care of it," isn't necessarily completely what the scripture intends for us to do. God brought me that far. The next step is up to me. And so that was also a very impactful turning point for me. And I think from that point on, I was very much kind of like, all right, doctors and nurses, what's next? Right. What do you need me to do? Like, what's my role? What do I need to do next? And they would say, these are the milestones we're reaching for. And I knew what was coming and what I was waiting for. And even since being out of the hospital, that's kind of the way it's been. I've had amazing care. Again, this is the Canadian healthcare system at its finest. I've had amazing care even as an outpatient. And my therapists have been very prescriptive. This is what we're going to do. These are the milestones you need to reach. These are the goals. Here are the exercises you need to do at home. And so I have been diligent at doing those things because I recognize that I'm doing them for my recovery, not for anybody else's. If I decide not to do it, I'm the one that doesn't benefit, right?
Right.
So, and I look at it as that God has put me where I need to be. He's provided the help and support that I need. I've got, like you said, the prayers of the saints behind me, and I need to do my part in my own recovery.
Wow, Kathy, that's such an amazing story. And to hear it again from your perspective, like I said, it takes me right back to that time, which, we can't lie, was a very scary time for all of us. But something that you said that you felt like to hope for something other than what you thought the direction was going in. You felt like that was a little unfair, maybe, or like it was wrong, like unfaithful. And I think that's interesting because I think that's what we do to ourselves a lot. We think that we have to maybe in our acceptance of what the will of God is, or trying to figure out what the will of God is, we put our own desires to the side and we say, okay, God, if it's your will that I die right now, okay. But listen, the Bible tells us that if we delight ourselves in the Lord, he gives us the desires of our heart. And how can he give us the desires of our heart if we're always like, oh, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. No, we have desire. I desire that I live, God. I desire that I go home. I leave this hospital, go home to my family, And I think about instances like even like Hezekiah in the Bible, when the prophet told him, you're going to die. And he was like, God, wait a minute. That's not what I want. And the Bible says that he prayed and he talked to God about it, and God gave him another 15 more years of life. And so I think an important message drawing from what you're saying, and for anyone who's tuned in, is to don't allow yourself to give up on what you want, what your desire is. Don't you allow yourself to give up what your desire is, because that is hope in itself. And just because you have a hope that something will happen your way doesn't mean that you're not having faith in God. You can have both. You can have both. You can believe that, God, I want your will to be done, but nevertheless, this is what I want, and even Jesus did that when he was in the garden. Right? He was like, look, God, if I could get out of this, that's what I really want. But nevertheless, not my will, but your will. You can have both of those desires. And so I think that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. We're going to break it up just for a few moments, because I felt like, you were emotional. I was emotional. This is a good moment to kind of break up the conversation a little bit and just do something fun. But I don't know if you're seeing the comments, but you're really encouraging people tonight. You are really encouraging people. They're commenting that your testimony is blessing them, and that's what we want to do with these Hope Talk sessions. So we're going to do something real fun. We're going to play Would You Rather, and you just got to come up with your answer to this real quick. Don't think about it too long. Just kind of, they're real light. And just a few of them. So here we go. You know how to play this, right? It's just you pick one or the other. Okay, just checking, Okay, would you rather? Ready?
Yeah.
Would you rather speak to animals or know other people's thoughts?
Speak to animals.
Ah, okay.
Speak to animals. I've always been told that what other people think of you is none of your business.
Very good. Okay. Would you rather, and I feel like I know the answer to this one, but I'm going to put it out there. Would you rather be a DC comic hero or a Marvel comic hero?
Come on.
I know that one was easy.
Imani might be home, but if she heard you say that, she would lose it. That's not even a choice. It's Marvel. It's
of course, right? Which one, real quick? If you could pick one of them, which one would you be?
Oh, which superhero?
Yeah.
Oh, Storm.
Of course. I honestly, I should have written down Storm, because I was like, she's going to say Storm. Yeah. Okay. Would you rather go on a roller coaster or go skydiving?
I guess skydiving.
Ooh.
I say that because I don't like roller coasters.
But we used to go on roller coasters all the time.
And I haven't been on them since then. Since we worked I stopped going on them.
So for all of you who are tuned in, Kathy and I used to work at Canada's Wonderland. It was one of our very first jobs. For 2 seasons, we worked at Canada's Wonderland. And when you work at Canada's Wonderland, they give you passes. You can go and you can ride all of the rides. So if she was not finished her shift, or if I wasn't finished my shift, we would kind of wait around for each other. And we do that by going on all the rides. We literally went on all the rides by ourselves. I'll wait for you. Let me go out. So we rode a lot of roller coasters. You would rather go skydiving.
Yes.
Whew,
Hate
okay,
roller
well
coasters.
let's talk about that because that's like on my list. So
Yeah.
we'll connect on that. We'll connect on that. Okay. Would you rather do something you love and make just enough money to get by, or do something you hate but make billions of
Ooh,
dollars?
something I love.
Ah,
I believe
absolutely.
that, and I encourage people in that way. I mean, you can make money doing anything. Do something you love.
Absolutely. If you were responsible for choosing whether the world would have bagels or donuts, which one would you choose?
Ooh, donuts.
Donuts. Would you rather go into the past and meet your ancestors, or would you go into the future and meet your great great grandchildren?
My ancestors.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
for sure.
Would you rather be able to fly or be invisible?
Fly.
Fly. Okay.
Yeah.
That goes into the what not wanting to know what people are thinking, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Like
Well,
not
also
my
because
business.
invisible. Yeah. I don't
Yeah,
need to know.
not my
I want to
business.
fly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you rather visit the moon or go on an all expenses paid vacation anywhere on Earth?
Oh, come on. All expenses paid vacation anywhere on Earth. What am I going to do on the moon?
What are we doing on the moon?
Are
Who
there
told
beaches
you
on
all
the
to go
moon?
up there?
No, thank you.
I'm always like, who told you all to go up there?
Yeah.
What are we
Why?
doing up there? Why? Okay. Would you rather live without music or without TV?
Ooh. Ooh. Without TV.
Ah,
Because in
okay. I know
2021, it's
that's
just
kind
not
of a
that good
tough one.
anymore. But that's a tough one.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Okay, last one. Would you rather watch comedies or action movies for the rest of your life if you had to pick one?
Are they Marvel movies? No, I'm kidding. Action movies.
Action movies. Very good. Cindy said Wonderland is traumatizing. I'm with Kathy on the skydiving. Not traumatizing, Cindy.
But
Oh,
see, with the
wow.
skydiving, I'm only ever going to do that like once.
Right.
You
You wouldn't
jump
do that more than
and that's it.
once. If you do that more than once, then I don't know. That's
Something's wrong.
I'm looking
Because
at you
roller coasters,
strange.
it's like, nah, I'll just stay on the ground. I don't need roller coasters in my life.
Well, the funny thing is, I used to love roller coasters, but the last couple times we went to the amusement park, we had to sit down and let the kids ride. We were like, "When did this
Yeah.
happen?
Yep,
Something
that
feels
happened to me.
weird."
That happened to me probably 10 years ago, so 15
Right,
years ago.
right. We're aging out. We're aging out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that was fun. Thank you so much for participating in that. Now, one of the things, and we're not going to be too much longer, but one of the things that you messaged me when you were reading the book, and you don't even know, but you messaging me this kind of helped guide me in terms of the promotion of the book and the message that I wanted to be kind of at the
Okay.
forefront. But one of the things you messaged me was, when it rains, it doesn't always pour. Can you just like tell me what that statement
That was
means to you?
about.
I know it's a line in the book, but tell me
Um,
what that means to you.
it spoke to what I was experiencing because it felt like it was pouring on me. Like I said, I left my house thinking I don't feel so great. 3 weeks later, they tell me I've had a stroke. So it was just kind of like I went from COVID to pneumonia in the ICU, and I had a stroke, and it was pouring. And so for a period of time there, even it was hard to know what to expect because I felt okay. And so a doctor coming in and saying to me, "You've had a stroke," when I felt the way I felt, it was kind of like, and what else? So every time there was a point where every time a doctor came into the room, especially the doctor, the nurses I was fine with, but if a doctor came in the room, I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was not expecting good news. I was sitting around waiting for bad news. Or if I called home, it was like, what's the bad news? Like, just somebody break it down to me. What's wrong now? And so I felt like I was constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then I read through this book and it says, well, when it rains, it doesn't always pour. And I was kind of like, yeah, that's true. It doesn't always. It doesn't always. This could actually be the end. This could be the bottom of the trough, and it could start going up from here. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds, and I shouldn't sit here waiting for the next disaster. And so that was impactful to me as well because it was kind of like move forward and stop waiting for the bad to happen.
Right. Right. And I love that you said, I don't know what the future holds, but hope is just like that, right? Hope is not about knowing the future, but having an expectation that it could
Yeah,
be something great, right? Having an expectation. That's just what hope is, having an expectation that it could be something great. It could be something horrible, but it could be
could be
something
something great.
great. And if you can, like, even just a small portion of your mind can focus on the fact that it could be something great, then you will have uplifted yourself and you will have pointed your mind in the right direction, right? So I love that so much. When it rains, it doesn't always pour. And I think
Doesn't always
sometimes, the saying is when it rains, it pours. And we say it, and it's like, oh Lord, here we go again. Oh boy, now that's happened. Now let's just sit back and see what else is going to happen now. So it's always expecting things to get worse. It's always expecting things to kind of be dismal. But when we can start telling ourselves, telling our minds again, because that's where the battle is in our minds, when we can start telling our minds, listen, just because this thing went bad doesn't mean it's about to snowball into an absolute disaster. This could be
Mhm.
it. It could be this could be a turning point. Every moment could be a
Could
turning
be a
point,
turning
right?
point. Yeah, I
Right.
think that's what it kind of meant to me was like we could have already turned. I missed the turning point because I'm sitting here waiting for the next disaster.
Right. Right. Exactly. Kathy, oh my gosh, I have loved this time with you. Thank you so much. I want to give you an opportunity if there's anything that you want to share as like a final closeout for people. I want to give you a moment to do that. I want to remind people to please go, and if you have not yet purchased a copy, A Pocket Full of Hope by Ayesha Daniels. A Pocket Full of Hope for when your pocket is empty. It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Indigo. You can get it as a Kindle book. You can even get it on Walmart.com. You can get it on iTunes, on the US side, on iTunes Books as an ebook. Please go out, get yourself a copy of the book, and then please go back wherever you purchased it from, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever, and write a review on it, because those reviews help to get good placement in the book, and they help other people who are looking to buy a book to kind of get an idea of what to expect. All right. So please, if you have not yet done so, go get a copy of A Pocket Full of Hope. And please take a moment and share this Hope Talks with somebody. Share it with a bunch of people. This is episode 1, and it's been fantastic. We have several episodes to come. It's going to be a great season, and I'm looking forward to it so much. But if there's anything, Kathy, that you have on the horizon that you want to talk about, and if you want to tell us where people can find you, where we can connect with you, follow you, all of that, please go ahead and do that.
I don't really have anything on the horizon at the moment. I'm 3 months out from having a stroke. I think this is week 14. And I'm just focused on recovery at this point. I'm learning to rest and to go
Yes.
slower.
Yes.
I'm acknowledging there's some things that I can't do that I used to be able to do. And I'm not stressing out about that. I'm really just kind of leaning into what I can do and, focusing on that and trying to get stronger and get better and trying to take it one day at a time. That's it. And I think that that's all I can do at the moment and not stress out. Where can you find me? I think the place, if you're looking to actually connect with me, try me on LinkedIn because I respond to everybody who messages me on LinkedIn. Not so much. I'm not great at responding to Facebook, so please don't message me there. You will not hear from me. And Instagram, I might. Depends on how I feel. If I decide to check my messages one day. But for the most part, LinkedIn, I respond to everybody, so you can find me there.
Okay,
Oh, and
sounds
I do want to say, please do get the book. It actually speaks to, let's see, I have mine here. A lot of different situations and circumstances, not just mine, but I find it speaks specifically to some and then generally to others. And I'm sure you'll find something in there for you. And do yourself a favor, get 2 copies, one for you and one for a friend. I've already gifted one as well because, I felt that I had somebody who could benefit from the book as well.
Thank you so much. That's so awesome. I appreciate your love and your support, and I appreciate you being part of this conversation tonight. And look, I love the fact that you said, I'm going to take a moment to rest, take the time to recover. Because if you all know anything about Kathy, Kathy is like a mover and a shaker. Kathy is a go getter. I tell everyone who will listen to me that she's like my smartest friend. She's also like my strongest friend. We don't have time to tell you about when we went on that bike ride in Niagara on the lake, and I had to stop at the side of the road and just, can you call somebody to come pick me up? Can you send a truck or something? I can't go any further. And given the opportunity, Kathy would have been able to ride for the entire day. So listen, when your body tells you it's time to rest, you got to pay attention and get that rest. Slow down, take it easy. And then when you come back, you can come back stronger, better, and ready to face every assignment that you have on hand. And I know the great things ahead for you. I know that you're going to be when you come out of this season, you're going to come out stronger, better, wiser, all of that. And I know there are so many people, so many more people that need to hear your story and need to hear how to get through their tough time. And I know that you're going to be an instrumental part of them coming through what they're going through too. So thank you again so much. We have just a few moments left. I'm going to ask Kathy, if you don't mind, would you just pray a quick prayer just to get us out of here? Thank you.
Okay, sure. Father, we just want to give you the praise, honor, and glory tonight. We thank you so much for being here with us and for giving us this opportunity to gather together like this, virtually even, to talk about you and your will and your way for us and what you want for us. We know that you were here with us, and we just ask that you take this word and you plant it in the hearts of those who are listening, and that, each and every person who hears it may be edified some way. And for those who are listening, Lord, I pray you bless them another time. Just touch them wherever they are. And I pray too for Ayesha and BJ and the boys, and for the work that she's doing in spreading your message of hope, and that it reaches far, far and wide, farther than she could have ever imagined it to reach. Thank you again for this opportunity and for your presence. And we give you all the glory. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
And God, I thank you for Kathy. I thank you for her life. I thank you for her testimony. I thank you for how you've brought her through, how you're continuing to strengthen her physically, spiritually, emotionally. I thank you for how you've used her this evening to be a blessing to so many, God. And I pray that as she goes forward, you would continue to use her for your glory, continue to bless her, continue to let your favor rest upon her life and the life of her family, God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you so much, Kathy. Listen, our next Hope Talks session will be next Thursday, August the 5th, same time, 8 p.m. We're going to be speaking with my friend Nakia, who has another awesome testimony of hope and of faith in God. You don't want to miss it. Next Thursday, August 5th. Please share. Please tell somebody about it. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you again, Kathy. I love you so much. To everyone who is tuned in, thank you for tuning in. I love you all. Feel free to comment, send me messages. Let me know your thoughts, all right? Love you all so much. Bye-bye.